You went through this awful experience when most of your band were killed in this plane crash. And you talked about this many times. I don't want to go over it again. I just wanted to ask you what effect that had on your life afterwards, how it changed your...
By 2024, Narvel Blackstock had married Laura Putty Stroud, a Nashville real estate agent who was not a stranger to Reba McEntire. Reports linking Narvel and Laura emerged in 2016, years before their reported marriage, creating an uncomfortable question. After 26 years of marriage, what does a woman say when her ex-husband eventually marries someone she already knew? And Reba McEntire did indeed react to her ex-husband's new relationship, and her response said it all. But to make any sense of it all, we need to start from the very beginning. The ranch girl who was never supposed to be a star. Long before Reba McEntire became one of country music's biggest stars, she was a ranch girl in southeastern Oklahoma who knew more about cattle and rodeo than she did about celebrity. Born in McAllister on March 28, 1955, she grew up in nearby Chalky on a vast family ranch where her father, Clark McEntire, was a three-time world champion steer roper, and her mother, Jacqueline, was the musical force in the family. The children were expected to work too. Reba competed as a barrel racer from childhood, while she and her siblings sang together as the Singing McEntires, performing at rodeos, fairs, clubs, and local events. There was, however, a second life waiting for her. Reba enrolled at Southeastern Oklahoma State University to study elementary education, with a minor in music, partly because her mother wanted her to have something practical to fall back on. But even while studying to become a teacher, Reba kept one foot in the world she had always known. She continued helping on the family ranch and competed in as many as 50 rodeos a year. Then, in 1974, a routine performance changed everything. At the National Finals Rodeo in Oklahoma City, Reba stepped onto the stage to sing the national anthem. In the audience was cowboy singer and songwriter Red Steagall. He heard something in the young woman's voice that she herself was still trying to understand. Steagall approached her afterward, invited her to record a demo, and then took the recording around Nashville looking for someone willing to bet on her. That bet came in November of 1975, when Mercury Records signed Reba. But the signing did not instantly create a superstar. Her first recordings were made in early 1976, and her debut single, I Don't Want to Be a One-Night Stand, reached only number 88 on Billboard's country chart. Her self-titled debut album followed in 1977, but the early years were a grind of recording sessions, touring, and small chart positions rather than instant fame. Even her first Grand Ole Opry appearance in 1977 was only the beginning. Reba had entered Nashville, but Nashville had not yet decided what to do with her. And while her music career was slowly taking shape, Reba's personal life was following a very different path. In June of 1976, she married Charlie Battles, a champion steer wrestler and rancher who was 10 years her senior. Their lives made perfect sense together, at least for a time. They were immersed in the rodeo world Reba had known since childhood, and they ran a cattle operation in Oklahoma while she continued trying to establish herself as a recording artist. But there was an uncomfortable problem developing beneath the surface. Reba's ambitions were no longer confined to Oklahoma. The woman who had grown up riding horses and working cattle was beginning to spend more and more time on stages, in recording studios, and on the road. The tension became impossible to ignore as Reba's career finally accelerated. In 1984, she moved to MCA and deliberately returned to a harder-edged country sound, a decision that transformed her career. My Kind of Country produced major hits, and Reba began winning awards with a speed that few women in country music had managed before. By 1986, she had joined the Grand Ole Opry, won the CMA Entertainer of the Year award, and established herself as a genuine star. Then came the moment that exposed the cost of that success. Reba later recalled that Charlie wanted her to slow down her life on the road after she won Entertainer of the Year. Her own conclusion was brutally simple: I guess I kind of chose my career over my marriage. On June 25, 1987, Reba filed for divorce, the husband who became her entire world. By the time Reba McEntire married Narvel Blackstock in 1989, the two had already spent years learning how to function as a team. Narvel had started out as a steel guitarist in Reba's band and later moved into the role of tour manager before taking over the management of her career. Their relationship was never built on the usual separation between home and work. Narvel was already inside the machinery of Reba's career before he became the man she came home to. When they finally married on June 3, 1989, the ceremony was private, held on a boat at Lake Tahoe with family present. The symbolism was almost perfect. After years on the road together, the professional partnership had become a marriage. But there was another family waiting on the other side of that wedding. Narvel had already been married once, to Elisa Gale Ritter, and had 3 children from that relationship, Chastity, Shauna, and Brandon. Reba, therefore, wasn't simply becoming Narvel's wife. She was becoming a stepmother. Then, in February of 1990, she and Narvel had their only child together, Shelby. Suddenly, the same man was simultaneously her husband, her manager, the father of her newborn son, and the connection tying her to 3 older children. And professionally, Narvel's influence was growing just as quickly. The couple eventually built Starstruck Entertainment, an operation that went far beyond simply booking Reba's concerts. The company brought together management, booking, publishing, promotion, publicity, accounting, ticket sales, and fan club administration, eventually expanding into other businesses. In practical terms, the person Reba married was also becoming one of the central people responsible for keeping an increasingly enormous career running. That arrangement might sound dangerous in hindsight, but at the time, Reba didn't seem to see it that way. In a 1989 interview with Entertainment Tonight, shortly after their wedding, she explained why she trusted him so completely. Narvel was the person who's out there, responding to people, telling her what worked, what didn't, and what looked good. Then she gave the reason that now sounds almost prophetic. That's why I married him. The arrangement became even more revealing when Reba's career entered another extraordinary phase. By the early 1990s, she wasn't simply a country singer with a manager. She was becoming a major entertainment brand, and Narvel was helping coordinate the operation. She relied on his judgment while concentrating on her performance. That division of labor could be enormously effective, but it also created a vulnerability that wouldn't become obvious until much later. If the marriage ever failed, Reba would also lose the person who understood the infrastructure behind her entire professional life. Then, on March 16, 1991, their carefully constructed world was confronted with something far more terrifying than a business problem. The night Reba lost almost her entire band. By March of 1991, Reba McEntire was at the height of a touring machine that moved constantly from one city to the next. On Friday night, March 15th, she and her band performed a private concert for IBM executives in San Diego. The plan afterward was routine. The touring party would leave in separate aircraft, with one plane carrying several members of the band and crew, while Reba, her then-husband and manager Narvel Blackstock, and her stylist were scheduled to travel separately the following day. Nobody at the airport could have known that this ordinary scheduling decision would soon become the reason Reba McEntire was alive. In the early hours of Saturday, March 16th, the first aircraft left Brown Field, a municipal airport near the United States-Mexico border. It was a twin-engine Hawker Siddeley executive jet chartered from Prestige Touring in Dallas, carrying 8 members of Reba's touring organization and 2 pilots. The aircraft had been scheduled to fly to Amarillo, Texas, for refueling before continuing to Fort Wayne, Indiana, where Reba was due to perform that night. Instead, less than 3 minutes after takeoff, the jet struck Otay Mountain, a steep peak rising more than 3,500 feet above the surrounding terrain. Everyone aboard was killed. The dead included guitarists Chris Austin and Michael Thomas, keyboard players Kirk Capello and Joey Cigainero, vocalist Paula K. Evans, bassist Terry Jackson, drummer Tony Saputo, and tour manager Jim Hammond. Pilots Don Holmes, Ennis, and Chris Hollinger were also killed. The loss was devastating precisely because this was not simply a workplace accident for Reba. These were members of the community surrounding her career, and several had been with her for years. Fateful, the two planes had taken off only minutes apart. The doomed aircraft departed first. The second plane followed, but its pilot saw nothing unusual. Instead, the crew realized they had lost radio contact with the other aircraft and continued their journey before being diverted to Nashville. Reba herself had remained behind in San Diego and would later leave on a different flight with Narvel. She heard about the crash before departing. The separation that had seemed like nothing more than a logistical arrangement had, within minutes, divided Reba's life into a before and an after. The investigation eventually revealed that the crash was more complicated than a single mysterious mistake. The National Transportation Safety Board concluded that the probable causes included improper planning by the pilot, failure to maintain adequate altitude and clearance over mountainous terrain, and inadequate monitoring by the co-pilot. Investigators also cited insufficient terrain information from an FAA flight service specialist, darkness, mountainous surroundings, and the pilot's unfamiliarity with the area. Earlier investigation had even examined whether the aircraft turned the wrong way after takeoff. The mountain had not moved. The danger was there. What changed was the chain of decisions made in the darkness. For Reba, however, knowing why the plane crashed could not answer the more painful question: what was she supposed to do now? Her spokeswoman said she was totally devastated, describing the tragedy as like losing part of her family. Reba canceled performances immediately, and the emotional shock was so severe that continuing her career was not something she could simply take for granted. Yet within weeks, she made a decision that would define the next chapter of her life. She would continue performing, partly because carrying on was a way to keep the memory of the people who had died alive. The rebuilding was both emotional and practical. An entire touring organization had been devastated in a matter of minutes, meaning Reba had to put another band together while still grieving the people who had filled those roles. Fellow musicians also stepped in. Vince Gill and Dolly Parton were among the country stars who offered support, with Parton even offering her own band to help Reba during the aftermath. What looked from the outside like a return to business was actually an attempt to reconstruct a life that had been abruptly emptied. And then Reba turned that grief into an album. Released on October 1st, 1991, For My Broken Heart was explicitly recorded in the wake of the crash, as a tribute to the lives lost from her band and crew. It became the best-selling album of her career and was eventually certified quadruple platinum. The music did not erase what happened at Otay Mountain. It gave the loss somewhere to go. You see, the crash was more than the darkest night of Reba's career. It taught her, brutally early, how quickly people could disappear from her life without warning. She had learned that lesson in the most devastating way possible. One moment, the people around her were preparing for another concert. Minutes later, 8 friends and colleagues were gone. Years later, when another part of Reba's personal world would begin to fracture, that old wound would matter. She already knew what it meant to wake up and discover that the life you thought was secure could change before you had even had the chance to say goodbye. The divorce that took away more than a husband. In August of 2015, Reba McEntire and Narvel Blackstock made an announcement that stunned country music. After 26 years of marriage, they were separating. But the number that mattered just as much was 35. That was how long they had worked together. They had built a marriage, a family, and a professional empire almost simultaneously, making it difficult to tell where one life ended and the other began. Their joint statement was deliberately calm, saying they would continue to support each other and asking for privacy. On the surface, it sounded like an amicable separation between two adults determined to handle the situation with dignity. But behind that polished statement was a reality Reba would reveal only months later. The divorce had not been her decision. In an interview with CMT's Cody Allen in March of 2016, She said plainly, "The divorce was not my idea. I didn't want it in any shape, form, or fashion." She explained that the hardest part was adjusting when someone else was unhappy, and she ultimately decided that if the marriage could not continue, she had to accept it. Her father's old expression became her way of describing the decision. She would take my marbles and go play somewhere else. And this was not simply the loss of a husband. Narvel had been embedded in Reba's career for decades. He had started as a steel guitar player in her band, eventually becoming her tour manager and then her husband and manager. Together, they built Starstruck Entertainment, the company involved in managing Reba and other major performers. Reba was now having to reshape the machinery of her career without the man who had helped run it. She took control of the management of her career as part of the divorce. Years later, during a 2024 appearance on The Drew Barrymore Show, Reba described the marriage as a situation that was always business. She explained that they had started working together before they were married, and that the work eventually became intertwined with practically everything: mornings, conversations, and even what she called pillow talk. Reba was not merely losing the person she had married in Lake Tahoe in 1989. She was separating from the person who had been part of her professional decision-making, her touring world, and the business infrastructure surrounding her fame for decades. There was also a financial dimension. You see, Blackstock received approximately $47.5 million in the divorce settlement. The marriage thus ended in October of 2015, while Reba emerged with control over her career management. But what happened next made the breakup far more painful to watch from the outside. The Blackstock family implodes, and Reba is still in the middle. Reba McEntire's divorce from Narvel Blackstock was supposed to end one chapter of her life. Instead, it left behind an entire family network that Reba could not simply switch off. When she married Narvel in 1989, she became stepmother to his 3 children from his first marriage: Shauna, Chastity, and Brandon Blackstock. She and Narvel later had their own son, Shelby. So when the marriage ended in 2015, Reba was not walking away from a husband and manager alone. She was leaving a household she had helped shape for more than 2 decades. And Brandon, in particular, never stopped being her family. Years later, Reba would make that unmistakably clear by calling him her stepson and oldest son. Brandon had followed his father into the entertainment business, working as a talent manager through the Blackstock family's Starstruck companies. Then, his personal life pulled the family even deeper into the spotlight. Brandon married Kelly Clarkson in October of 2013, after their relationship began the previous year. They eventually had 2 children, River Rose and Remington, while Brandon continued working as Clarkson's manager. The connection was striking. Reba had once been managed by Narvel, Narvel had managed Clarkson, and now Brandon was managing Clarkson while married to her. A family that already mixed marriage and business was repeating the same pattern in another generation. Then, in June of 2020, Clarkson filed for divorce. What followed was one of the most public family breakups in modern pop culture. But there was another battle developing underneath it. Clarkson and Brandon's marriage was ending at the same time that Clarkson challenged the business relationship she had with Starstruck Management Group. The dispute eventually reached California's labor commissioner, where Clarkson argued that Brandon had violated the state's Talent Agencies Act by procuring work for her without the required talent agency license. After a hearing in 2023, the California Labor Commissioner found that Brandon had unlawfully procured certain employment opportunities for Clarkson and ordered the Starstruck entities to return more than $2.6 million in commissions. The decision covered commissions connected to work, including Clarkson's role on The Voice, a Norwegian cruise line promotion, and other projects. Starstruck appealed the determination. Reba, however, was not a participant in this litigation. That distinction matters. The legal fight belonged to Clarkson, Brandon, Narvel, and the companies involved, but it was happening inside a family Reba still cared about. And remarkably, Reba's relationship with Clarkson survived the chaos too. Clarkson later said that she and Reba had been friends before Brandon and Clarkson ever became a couple. After the divorce, that friendship continued. Reba had already described Clarkson as a good friend and part of her family, and Clarkson later made clear that her split from Brandon had not destroyed her relationship with Reba. Reba had once been Brandon's stepmother, was still close to him, remained friendly with his former wife, and was simultaneously connected to the man at the center of the Blackstock family through her own son, Shelby. Then, the family faced something no lawsuit could prepare them for. Brandon was diagnosed with cancer and fought the disease privately for more than 3 years. On August 6, 2025, Clarkson revealed that she was postponing the remaining dates of her Las Vegas residency because her children's father had been ill and she needed to be present for them. The following day, August 7th, the Blackstock family announced that Brandon had died at the age of 48. Later, the Silver Bow County coroner identified malignant melanoma as the cause of death and said Brandon had died peacefully at his home in Butte, Montana, under hospice care and surrounded by family. For Reba, this was not the death of an ex-husband's adult child, whom she barely knew anymore. She had continued calling Brandon her son years after the divorce, and in the year before his death, she had actually grown closer to the Blackstock family again. One source told Us Weekly that Reba had spent more time with the family than she had in previous years, and that the group had really came together. Earlier in 2025, she flew members of the Blackstock family to the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo surrounding one of her performances, turning the trip into a family gathering. That detail changes the meaning of everything that came before it. Reba had not simply divorced Narvel and erased the Blackstock name from her life. She remained connected to Brandon, Shelby, Shauna, Chastity, and, through them, the wider family. Even after years of complicated relationships, those bonds were still there when Brandon became seriously ill. After his death, Reba posted a photograph with him and wrote that she was thankful for the time they had together. She did not use the moment to revisit the divorce, the business disputes, or the years of family tension. She mourned him as family. And then there was the final twist involving Narvel. He eventually married Laura Putty Stroud, a Nashville real estate agent. But you see, she wasn't just any Nashville real estate agent. She had been a friend of Reba McEntire and Narvel while they were still together. One source told Page 6 that the two were very serious, while another crucial detail was left unresolved. It was unclear when they had actually started dating. That uncertainty became the foundation for years of speculation, because Reba and Narvel had only finalized their divorce in October of 2015. What made the timing even more uncomfortable was the fact that Reba already knew her. In 2014, while Reba was still married to Narvel, Reba and Laura were photographed together at a Katy Perry concert, with Reba sharing a picture of herself and Laura wearing colorful wigs. Reports also noted that Laura had spent time around Reba's family, including attending Shelby Blackstock's racing events. In other words, Laura had existed within Reba's social orbit before anyone publicly connected her romantically to Narvel. Once reports of Narvel and Laura emerged, it was easy for outsiders to construct a timeline backward. Reba and Laura had known each other. The divorce had been announced in August of 2015. Narvel was dating Laura by early 2016. Some naturally wondered whether the relationship had begun before the marriage ended. So, had it? Well, there is no reliable evidence establishing that an affair occurred while Reba and Narvel were still married. Contemporary reporting itself admitted that the starting point of the relationship was unclear. Neither Reba nor Narvel publicly established a pre-divorce affair as fact. There was another reason the speculation refused to disappear. Reba had already said publicly that she never wanted the divorce. In March of 2016, just months after the marriage ended, she told CMT that the divorce was not my idea, and that she didn't want it in any shape, form, or fashion. That statement meant that when reports about Laura appeared, Audiences were not looking at a woman who had casually moved on from a marriage. They were looking at someone who had openly admitted she had wanted the marriage to survive. Yet even then, Reba did not turn the Laura reports into a public attack. Then the story went quiet for years, which arguably made the eventual ending even more striking. Narvel and Laura did not immediately become a high-profile celebrity couple, and much of what circulated about them came through entertainment reporting rather than detailed interviews with the couple themselves. Finally, in April of 2024, reports emerged that Narvel had married Laura in Nashville. According to In Touch, the ceremony took place at the Hermitage, Nashville, with Blake Shelton officiating, and Reba and Narvel's son Shelby was present. Other reports said members of the extended Blackstock family also attended. And then, Reba finally spoke up. Reba's answer. When Narvel Blackstock moved on with Laura Putty Stroud, Reba McEntire did not publicly attack either of them or turn the breakup into a celebrity feud. Instead, she repeatedly chose a very different response: civility, distance where necessary, and an effort to protect the family relationships that remained. That choice becomes more striking when you remember what she had actually lost. Narvel had been her husband for 26 years, her professional partner for decades, and the father of her only child. Yet Reba did not treat the end of the marriage as permission to erase everyone connected to it. She could have publicly condemned Laura. She could have attacked Narvel. She could have treated every new relationship and every family dispute as another reason to reopen the old wounds. Instead, her public comments consistently pointed in the opposite direction. Even while Brandon and Clarkson were going through their extraordinarily public divorce and the starstruck legal battle, Reba said she loved them both and was pulling for both of them. She was not pretending that the situation was simple. She was refusing to make herself the judge of it. The legal battle belonged to Clarkson, Brandon, and the Blackstock business interests. Reba did not insert herself into the litigation. Then Brandon's death changed the emotional stakes completely. After battling cancer for more than 3 years, he died on August 7, 2025, at the age of 48. For Reba, this was not simply the death of her former husband's adult son. This was the loss of someone she had spent decades regarding as her own. The family announcement said Brandon died peacefully, surrounded by family, and Reba publicly mourned him as the son she had always considered him to be. The years of divorce, legal disputes, and shifting loyalties suddenly looked very small beside the permanence of death. And there was another remarkable development before Brandon's death. Reba, you see, had grown closer to the Blackstock family again and was spending significant time with them. This destroys the simplest version of this story, the idea that Reba divorced Narvel and then walked away from his entire family. She did not. The marriage was over, but Brandon remained her son in her eyes, Shelby remained her son, and the wider network of relationships built over decades continued to exist. Reba had learned, perhaps painfully, that leaving one relationship did not require destroying every relationship surrounding it. That lesson also makes her later relationship with Rex Lynn more revealing. Reba and Lynn had actually known each other since 1991, but their relationship did not become romantic until 2020. They reconnected after the death of Reba's mother and grew closer during the isolation of the pandemic. By October of that year, Reba was openly describing Lynn as funny, smart, and someone she enjoyed talking with. This was a relationship that developed after Reba had already experienced the collapse of a 26-year marriage, and it seemed to carry a different rhythm from the life she had built with Narvel. 4 years later, Lynn proposed on Christmas Eve of 2024 during a walk at their Tennessee ranch. Reba described the proposal as a total surprise and said she was thrilled to death. As of August of 2026, they are engaged but have not yet married. Their wedding has repeatedly been delayed because both remain busy with work, including their television series Happy's Place. Reba has said the eventual celebration will be low-key, surrounded by family, friends, and their animals, potentially lasting several days rather than being a single traditional wedding day. And that is what makes Reba's response to Narvel and Laura so much more interesting than revenge would have been. She did not need to win the divorce. She did not need to prove that she had found someone better. After decades of losing people, losing a marriage, surviving the destruction of her touring family, and watching the Blackstocks move into entirely different chapters, Reba chose something quieter. She kept what could still be kept. Narvel found another wife. Reba found Rex. Brandon built a life of his own before cancer took it away. The family changed shape again and again, but Reba refused to believe that every change required another relationship to be destroyed. Laura's place in that story is therefore almost symbolic. She was simply another reminder that the life Reba and Narvel built together had ended. What survived were the memories, the children, the friendships, the grief, and the complicated bonds that no divorce decree could erase. Reba could not control who Narvel became after their marriage. She could control what she became afterward. And she did just that. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.